Remember when flying was simple? You'd pack your bag the night before, maybe toss in some aspirin and your favorite lighter, grab a coffee at the terminal, and board without a second thought. Those days are gone. What worked for decades, the casual packing habits you've relied on since the 90s, can now land you in a detention room under harsh lights, explaining yourself to officers who aren't interested in your intentions. They care about protocols, and in 2025, those protocols have teeth. This isn't about being paranoid, it's about being informed. Because right now, airports worldwide have deployed technology and enforcement measures that would have seemed impossible just 5 years ago. Artificial intelligence scans your belongings faster than any human ever could. Chemical detection swabs pick up traces you didn't even know were there. And the rules. They shift depending on which country you're flying through, sometimes changing between your departure and arrival. The travelers getting caught aren't criminals. They're regular people like you who assumed what's been fine for years would still be fine today. A grandmother detained in Tokyo over unlabeled vitamins, a businessman missing his connection in Dubai because of a rechargeable lighter, a retiree facing fines in Paris for a souvenir that turned out to be counterfeit. None of them saw it coming. That's the problem with 2025. The traps are invisible until you're already caught. So before you pack for your next trip, whether it's visiting grandchildren overseas or finally taking that European vacation you've been planning, you need to know what's changed. These aren't dramatic warnings meant to scare you. They're facts that could save you from an experience that turns a dream vacation into a nightmare you'll never forget. Let's walk through the 10 ordinary items that have become extraordinary problems. And more importantly, what you can do to protect yourself. You've been taking the same vitamins for 20 years. Glucosamine for your joints, a little melatonin for sleep, maybe some blood pressure medication your doctor prescribed. You don't think twice about transferring them into a smaller container to save space in your carry-on? After all, who wants to lug around those bulky prescription bottles? But that simple convenience, that thing you've done on every trip since the kids were small, can now get you detained for hours in a foreign airport. Here's what's happening. Drug trafficking through airports has become more sophisticated. And authorities have responded by treating every unlabeled pill as suspicious until proven otherwise. In Japan, customs officers stopped a 72-year-old woman from Ohio because she had loose tablets in a plastic organizer. They were calcium supplements and baby aspirin. It took 8 hours and multiple phone calls to her physician back home before they released her. She missed her connecting flight and spent the night in an airport hotel, crying and confused about how something so innocent went so wrong. Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Singapore, even major European hubs have similar protocols now. If they can't immediately identify what you're carrying, they bag it as evidence and start an investigation. You can't explain your way out of it. You can't show them the bottle at home through a video call. The process has started, and you're stuck in it until they're satisfied. The officers aren't trying to be difficult. They're following procedures designed to catch people smuggling narcotics disguised as everyday medications. The problem is, those procedures don't distinguish between a drug mule and someone who just wanted to travel light. The solution isn't complicated, but it requires changing a habit you might have had for decades. Keep everything in its original labeled container. If your doctor prescribed it, bring the prescription printout or have your pharmacy print a travel letter. For over-the-counter items, keep them in the manufacturer's packaging, even if it takes up more room. Yes, it's bulkier, yes, it feels excessive, but that label is your protection. It's the difference between walking through customs in 5 minutes and sitting in a holding area wondering if you'll make your flight at all. In 2025, convenience has become a liability, and that little bit of extra space in your suitcase is worth its weight in peace of mind. That sleek suitcase you bought, the one with built-in USB ports and GPS tracking, seemed like the perfect modern travel companion. You can charge your phone right from the bag and track it through an app if the airline loses it. It costs more than your old luggage, but you figured the investment would pay off over time. Then you get to the airport check-in counter, and the agent tells you the bag can't be accepted. Not because it's damaged or overweight, but because the battery inside can't be removed. This catches people off guard constantly. The lithium-ion batteries that power these smart features are the same technology that's caused fires on planes. Small blazes that turned into emergency landings and evacuations. Aviation authorities took notice, and now major airlines from Emirates to Delta to Singapore Air have strict policies. If the battery isn't easily removable, meaning you can take it out without tools or technical knowledge, the bag doesn't fly, period. The phrase, TSA approved on the marketing materials, doesn't matter. What matters is whether the gate agent can physically see you remove the battery in under 30 seconds. Picture this scenario. You're at the counter, running slightly behind schedule. The agent asks about your bag's battery. You explain it's built-in but safe, that you've flown with it before. She shakes her head and calls a supervisor. 10 minutes pass. Other passengers in line are getting restless. The supervisor arrives, examines the bag, and delivers the verdict. It can't be checked, and you can't take it on board. Your options are to abandon the luggage entirely or miss your flight while you figure out alternative arrangements. Either way, that smart investment just became a very expensive mistake. Before you travel, dig out the manual or search online for your specific luggage model. Find out if the battery is removable and learn how to take it out. If it's permanently installed, seriously consider replacing the bag before your next trip. This isn't about being old-fashioned or resisting technology. It's about understanding that the rules have shifted underneath us, and what was perfectly acceptable 2 years ago can now derail your entire journey. The smartest luggage in 2025 isn't the one with the most features. It's the one that actually gets on the plane with you. You're probably traveling with more devices than you did 10 years ago. A smartphone, maybe a tablet, perhaps a camera or e-reader. Staying charged matters, so you bought a hefty power bank that can recharge everything multiple times. It's become as essential to your packing list as your passport. But there's a calculation happening at airport security that you might not be aware of. And if your power bank fails that test, it's getting confiscated on the spot. The measurement is watt-hours, and most airlines cap carry-on batteries between 100 and 160 watt-hours. Anything above that requires special approval, and anything above 160 is banned outright. The problem? Many travelers have no idea what watt-hour rating their power bank has. The number might be printed in tiny text on the device itself, or it might not be listed at all. And if security can't verify it within a few seconds of inspection, they're not taking chances. In early 2025, Hong Kong authorities stopped a photographer traveling with what he thought was a standard portable charger. Turned out it was a 200 watt-hour power station, way over the limit and completely unlabeled. They confiscated it immediately. He argued it was expensive, that he needed it for his equipment, that he'd flown with it before. None of it mattered. The rules had been updated, enforcement had been tightened, and his lack of knowledge didn't create an exception. He watched his $400 battery pack disappear into a bin with dozens of others, all seized that same week. Here's what you need to do. Check every battery you plan to bring. Look for the watt-hour rating printed on the device. If it's not there, search online for the model number and specifications. Most standard portable chargers fall safely under the limit, but the larger capacity ones, especially those marketed to photographers and tech professionals, often don't, and make absolutely certain that rating is visible. Some travelers have started using label makers to print the specs directly onto their batteries just to speed up the security process. It sounds excessive until you're standing there watching an officer turn your power bank over and over, looking for information that isn't there while your boarding time ticks closer. The consequences aren't just losing the device. In some airports, carrying an oversized or unlabeled lithium battery triggers additional screening. Your entire bag gets searched. You might get pulled aside for questioning. What should have been a 5-minute walk through security turns into a 30-minute ordeal that leaves you sweating and running for your gate. All because of a battery you barely thought about when you packed it? In 2025, those little black bricks in your carry-on carry a lot more risk than most people realize. The vape pen seemed like a better alternative when you quit smoking 15 years ago. It's small, discreet, and you've flown with it countless times without issue. You know not to use it on the plane, of course, but having it with you for the layover or after you land has always been fine. Except now, the rules around vaping have fragmented into a confusing patchwork of regulations that change based on where you're flying, where you're connecting, and sometimes even which airline you've booked. Qatar Airways has banned illiquids completely on certain routes. Japan applies liquid restrictions that are even stricter than what the TSA enforces. Thailand, Singapore, and several Gulf states have gone further, treating possession of vaping devices as outright illegal, even if you have no intention of using them in-country. You might pack your vape thinking you'll just keep it in your bag until you get home. But if your layover happens to be in Bangkok or Dubai, you could be detained the moment they scan your luggage. The incidents pile up. A man flying from Los Angeles to Asia decided to charge his vape pen using the power outlet at his seat. He wasn't trying to use it, just top up the battery for later. Within minutes, a flight attendant noticed and reported it to the captain. Charging lithium battery devices at your seat has been classified in the same category as tampering with smoke detectors, a serious federal violation. He was arrested upon landing, faced fines, and ended up with a travel record that flagged him for additional screening on every subsequent flight. His reasoning, that he didn't know, that he wasn't bothering anyone, meant absolutely nothing. The technology has caught up to modern airport scanners can detect residual vapor and nicotine traces on devices and even in your bag's lining. Some terminals have installed sensors that pick up the chemical signature of vaping liquid from several feet away. You might think you're being careful, but the equipment doesn't care about your intentions. It registers a positive hit and flags you for inspection. Once that happens, you're explaining yourself to security personnel who've heard every excuse and don't have the authority to let minor violations slide. If you absolutely must travel with a vape, research every destination and layover point before you leave home. Check whether possession is legal, what the liquid limits are, and whether you're required to declare it at customs. Better yet, if your trip doesn't require it, leave it behind. Buy disposable alternatives at your destination if you need them, or plan to go without during the journey. Because in 2025, that little device you barely think about has become one of the easiest ways to turn a routine flight into a legal complication that follows you for years. You bought a small drone 5 years ago, back when they were just becoming popular for vacation videos. It folds up to the size of a smartphone, weighs almost nothing, and captures incredible footage of beaches and mountains and cityscapes you could never photograph from the ground. You've used it responsibly, always following local guidelines, never flying near airports or crowds. It's just a hobby, a way to document your travels. But in 2025, that innocent gadget has been reclassified in the eyes of global security as potential surveillance equipment. Countries around the world have started treating drones with suspicion, not because of what you've done, but because of what they can do. They can record restricted areas, they can transmit data in real time, they can map infrastructure and military installations, even unintentionally. So when your bag passes through the scanner and that folded drone lights up the screen, you're not seen as a hobbyist anymore. You're flagged as someone carrying equipment that could be used for espionage, and suddenly your vacation plans include an interrogation room. Egypt arrested several tourists in 2024 for carrying small consumer drones near historical sites. There was no footage, no flights, not even an attempt to take off. Just possession was enough. The travelers tried to explain they were only there for personal videos. But the Ministry of Civil Aviation had issued new regulations months earlier, requiring advance permits. The tourists didn't know, they hadn't checked, and ignorance didn't protect them from fines, confiscation, and in some cases, court appearances that delayed their departure for weeks. India now requires online registration before you even enter the country with a drone. Skip that step, and customs has the authority to seize the device permanently. You might think you're just passing through, that you won't even take it out of your bag, but the scanners don't care about your plans. They detect the drone, the system flags it as unregistered, and you're diverted to secondary inspection. Radio frequency scanners can identify drones even when they're powered off, so you can't hide it by keeping it dormant. The technology finds it anyway. The advice here is straightforward. If your trip doesn't absolutely require aerial footage, leave the drone at home. If it does, research the permit requirements for every country you'll enter, including layover. Some travelers have started shipping their drones separately as cargo, days before the flight, just to avoid the airport hassle entirely. It's not convenient, but convenience stopped being the priority the moment drones got reclassified from toys to tools. That little flying camera might capture amazing memories, but it can also capture the attention of authorities who don't share your enthusiasm. CBD oil has become mainstream over the past decade. You might use it for joint pain, to help with sleep, or just to take the edge off anxiety before a long flight. It's sold everywhere back home, at pharmacies and grocery stores, sometimes even at gas stations. It feels as ordinary as buying vitamins. So you toss a small bottle into your toiletry bag without a second thought, the same way you've done on your last 5 trips. But the moment you land in certain countries, that innocent wellness product becomes something airport security treats like contraband. Here's the disconnect. CBD regulations vary wildly from one nation to another. What's perfectly legal in the United States or Canada can carry serious criminal penalties in places like Japan, Indonesia, the United Arab Emirates, and Thailand. These countries don't distinguish between CBD with trace amounts of THC and full cannabis products. It's all categorized under the same umbrella, and that umbrella is illegal. You might insist it's just hemp extract, that there's no psychoactive component. But those explanations don't translate into legal protections. To customs officers operating under zero-tolerance policies, you're carrying a banned substance. The detection methods have advanced dramatically. Chemical swabs can pick up CBD residue not just in the bottle, but on your hands, your luggage lining, even your clothing, if you've handled the product recently. Some airports in Asia and the Middle East now use these swabs routinely on incoming passengers. A positive result, even a trace amount that you didn't realize was there, triggers an immediate escalation. Your bags are searched thoroughly. You're questioned about where you got it, why you're carrying it, whether you intended to sell it. The assumption isn't innocence, it's suspicion. A woman traveling through Dubai in late 2024 had CBD lotion in her checked luggage. She'd used it for years to manage arthritis pain and never had an issue on domestic flights. But Dubai's customs found it during a random inspection. She was detained for 12 hours while they tested the product and verified her story. Eventually, they let her go with a warning, but the lotion was destroyed, and she was told that if she returned to the UAE with any similar product, she'd face criminal charges. The stress of those 12 hours, not knowing if she'd be arrested or deported, overshadowed her entire trip. The safe approach is simple, but requires discipline. Don't travel internationally with CBD products unless you've confirmed, in writing from official sources, that they're legal at your destination and every layover point. Even then, carry documentation from the manufacturer showing the THC content is 0. If there's any doubt, leave it home. Find alternatives at your destination. Adjust your routine for the duration of the trip. Or consult your doctor about options that won't put you at risk. That small bottle of relief isn't worth the possibility of detention, fines, or worse. In 2025, wellness products have become a gamble, and the odds aren't in your favor. You're walking through a market in Bangkok or wandering the streets near the Colosseum in Rome, and you spot a beautiful handbag. It's got the designer logo, the quality looks decent, and the price is a fraction of what it would cost back home. You know it's probably not authentic, but you figure it's a harmless souvenir, a fun story about the deal you scored on vacation. You pack it in your suitcase, maybe wear it through the airport to save space, and think nothing of it, until customs stops you. Counterfeit goods used to be a minor issue, something authorities cared about but rarely enforced for individual travelers. That changed in 2025. European airports, particularly in France and Italy, have deployed artificial intelligence systems that scan images of your belongings as they pass through security. These systems cross-reference logos, stitching patterns, materials, even the spacing of brand names against databases of authentic products. Within seconds, that fake handbag you thought was clever is flagged, and so are you. The process is automated, efficient, and ruthless. France has started issuing fines that run into the thousands of euros for travelers carrying counterfeit items, even single pieces. Italy has similar penalties. The justification is that counterfeits fund organized crime networks, money laundering operations, and sometimes even trafficking. By purchasing and transporting these goods, even innocently, you're contributing to that system. The authorities don't care that you didn't know the broader implications. You had the item, it's fake, and that's enough. The United States has joined the crackdown as well. Border officials now routinely seize counterfeit goods and issue warnings that repeat offenses can result in criminal charges. That $30 pair of designer headphones you bought from a street vendor in Asia might seem insignificant, but it's enough to get your luggage flagged, your name added to a watch list, and your future travels subjected to additional scrutiny. The embarrassment compounds the problem. You're standing at customs while an officer holds up your fake Rolex or knockoff sunglasses in front of other passengers. Everyone watching as you try to explain something that has no good explanation. The straightforward answer is not to buy counterfeits in the first place. If something seems too cheap to be real, it probably isn't. And if you're tempted anyway, remember that customs technology can now identify fakes better than most people can. Don't wear counterfeit items through the airport thinking you'll blend in. Don't pack them hoping they'll go unnoticed. The scanners will find them, the AI will flag them, and you'll face consequences that turn a bargain into one of the most expensive mistakes of your trip. In 2025, authenticity isn't just about quality, it's about avoiding legal trouble that can haunt you long after you get home. It's a small thing, barely worth mentioning. You've carried a lighter in your pocket or purse for decades. Maybe for cigarettes, maybe just to have on hand for candles, or the occasional campfire. At some point, you upgraded to one of those sleek, rechargeable models, the kind that uses a plasma arc instead of a flame. It felt modern, environmentally friendly, and far more reliable than disposable lighters that always seem to run out at the worst moment. You've flown with it multiple times. Nobody ever said anything. Until now. Rechargeable lighters have been added to the banned items list at airports worldwide, right alongside weapons and explosives. The reason is the lithium battery inside. After several incidents where electronic lighters overheated mid-flight, regulators decided the risk wasn't worth allowing them on board. The International Civil Aviation Organization issued updated guidelines in late 2024, and enforcement began immediately. Even if your specific model claims to be TSA approved, that approval means nothing if the security officer can't verify that the battery is removable, and most of them aren't. The scene plays out the same way every time. You're going through security, and the scanner picks up your lighter. An officer pulls you aside and asks to see it. You hand it over, explaining it's rechargeable and perfectly safe. The officer examines it, checks the battery compartment, and finds it's built-in. Protocol requires confiscation. You might protest that you've flown with it before, that it cost $50, that you need it. None of that changes the outcome. The lighter goes into a bin with dozens of others, and you're left frustrated and running late for your gate. Some passengers have missed connections entirely because of the delay. What should have been a 2-minute security check turns into 15 minutes of discussion. inspection, and ultimately confiscation. By the time you gather your belongings and reach the gate, the boarding door has closed. You're rebooked on a later flight, your schedule disrupted, all because of an item you barely thought about when you left the house that morning. The solution is almost too simple to mention, but it's worth stating clearly. If you need a lighter for your trip, buy a cheap disposable one after you land. They're available everywhere, cost almost nothing, and don't trigger any security concerns. Leave your rechargeable lighter at home, no matter how attached to it you've become. In 2025, that attachment could cost you your flight, your connection, or hours of your day spent arguing with officials who don't have the authority to make exceptions. Sometimes the old ways really are better. You've carried a pocket multi-tool for years. It's got a small blade, a screwdriver, maybe a bottle opener, and a pair of tiny scissors. You've used it to fix loose screws on your glasses, open packaging, tighten bolts on luggage handles. It's been genuinely useful on trips, the kind of practical item that pays for itself over and over. You toss it in your carry-on out of habit, the same way you pack your phone charger or reading glasses. And that habit is exactly what gets you stopped. Airport security has always been cautious about knives, but the definition of what constitutes a weapon has expanded dramatically. Tactical pens, belt buckles with hidden blades, souvenir throwing stars, even multi-tools with blades shorter than 2 inches are now grounds for confiscation and sometimes fines. The artificial intelligence systems that scan your belongings are trained to spot these items even when they're collapsed or hidden inside other objects. To the machine, your innocent tool registers as a potential weapon, and that's all it takes. A businessman traveling through London Heathrow learned this the hard way. He had a Swiss Army-style multi-tool in his carry-on, something he'd flown with for over a decade without issue. The blade was less than 2 inches long, perfectly legal in the United States. But UK regulations are stricter, and the security officer had no discretion to let it pass. The traveler was fined, the tool was confiscated, and he was told that attempting to bring a similar item through again could result in criminal charges. He argued that he didn't know the rules had changed, that it wasn't a weapon in any meaningful sense. The officer responded that ignorance wasn't a defense and intent didn't matter. The item met the definition, and that was final. This extends beyond tools. Souvenir shops in some countries sell items that are legal to purchase, but illegal to transport. Decorative daggers, letter openers, shaped like swords, keychains with tiny blades attached. You buy them thinking they're harmless novelties, pack them without a second thought, and then face confiscation at your departing airport. By then, you've already spent the money, and the shop isn't offering refunds. The souvenir you thought would be a conversation piece back home never makes it past security. Before you pack, look at everything you're bringing with a critical eye. Ask yourself whether any item could be perceived as a weapon by someone who doesn't know your intentions. If there's even a possibility, leave it home or pack it in checked luggage after verifying it's allowed there. The 2 minutes of convenience that multi-tool provides isn't worth the hour of hassle when security finds it. In 2025, the line between useful tool and prohibited item has blurred almost to invisibility. And you don't want to discover where that line is while you're standing at a checkpoint with your flight boarding in 20 minutes. You might be wondering why all of this feels so different from the travel experiences you had just a few years ago. The answer isn't simple, but it's rooted in real events that forced authorities worldwide to rethink how they approach security. Lithium battery fires became more frequent as we all started carrying more devices. Drug trafficking networks adapted their methods, disguising narcotics as everyday items. Drone technology became accessible enough that bad actors could use it for surveillance or worse, and counterfeiting operations grew sophisticated enough that fake goods became indistinguishable from real ones without advanced testing. The pandemic accelerated these changes in unexpected ways. When travel resumed, authorities had time to implement systems that had been in development for years but never fully deployed. Artificial intelligence that can identify threats in milliseconds, chemical swabs sensitive enough to detect trace amounts of banned substances, databases that track travelers flagged for violations, ensuring that one mistake follows you across borders. These weren't reactive measures thrown together in a panic. They were carefully designed protocols that airports had been preparing to launch, and the pause in global travel gave them the opportunity to flip the switch. Different regions interpret these rules in their own ways, which creates the confusion travelers face today. What's acceptable in Europe might be banned in Asia. What's fine in North America could land you in jail in the Middle East. There's no universal standard, no single resource that lists every regulation for every country. You're expected to research each destination independently, and even then, the information you find might be outdated by the time you arrive. The burden has shifted entirely to you, the traveler, to know and comply with rules that change faster than guidebooks can track. This isn't going to get easier. As technology improves, enforcement will become more stringent, not less. Airports will continue investing in detection systems that leave less room for mistakes or oversights. The tolerance for "I didn't know" will shrink further as authorities assume that information is readily available. Online and ignorance is a choice. The travelers who thrive in this environment will be the ones who adapt, who take the time to verify what they're packing, who double-check regulations before every trip, and who accept that the casual approach to travel that worked for decades simply doesn't work anymore. The good news is that avoiding these problems doesn't require paranoia or obsessive planning. It requires awareness and a few practical habits that become second nature once you get used to them. Start by making a packing checklist that you review every time you travel. Include specific reminders about medications, batteries, electronics, and any items that might have legal restrictions. Don't rely on memory. Write it down, keep it on your phone, and consult it before you zip your bag closed. Research your destination and layover cities at least a week before departure. Check government travel advisory websites, airline policies, and airport security pages. Look specifically for items that are banned or restricted. If you're unsure about something, reach out to the embassy or consulate of the country you're visiting and ask directly. Get the answer in writing if possible, whether it's an email response or a screenshot of official guidance. That documentation won't guarantee you avoid problems, but it provides evidence that you made a good faith effort to comply. Keep everything in its original packaging whenever possible. Medications should stay in labeled bottles with your name on the prescription. Electronics should remain in boxes with model numbers and specifications visible. Batteries should display their watt-hour ratings clearly, even if you have to label them yourself. This isn't about being overly cautious. It's about making the security officer's job easier, which makes your passage through the checkpoint faster and smoother. When in doubt, leave it out. If an item feels questionable, if you're not entirely sure it's allowed, or if packing it creates even a small amount of stress, it's probably not worth bringing. You can buy toiletries at your destination. You can rent equipment instead of bringing your own. You can go without certain conveniences for the duration of your trip. The temporary inconvenience of doing without something pales in comparison to the lasting hassle of having it confiscated or worse, facing legal consequences because you brought the wrong thing. Finally, approach airport security with patience and respect. The officers enforcing these rules didn't create them, and they don't have the authority to bend them for individual cases. Getting defensive or argumentative when something is flagged only slows down the process and increases the likelihood of additional screening. Stay calm, comply with requests, and if something does get confiscated, accept it gracefully. You can file a complaint later through proper channels, but the checkpoint isn't the place to fight the battle. Your goal is to get through security and onto your flight with as little friction as possible, and cooperation is the fastest path to that goal. Travel has always required adapting to new realities. There was a time when you could walk your family to the gate and watch the plane take off. Then came metal detectors and X-rays. Liquid restrictions followed after security threats emerged. Each change felt intrusive at first, but eventually became routine. The current wave of regulations is just the latest evolution, and like the ones before it, it will become normal with time and practice. The difference now is the speed at which things change and the technology that enforces compliance. You can't rely on what worked last year or even last month. Every trip requires fresh attention to the details, and that might feel exhausting compared to the spontaneous travel of decades past. But it's also empowering in a way. By taking control of your preparation, by staying informed and deliberate about what you pack, you're protecting not just your belongings, but your freedom to move through the world without unnecessary complications. Think of it this way: you've adapted to countless changes over your lifetime. New traffic laws, updated building codes, evolving tax regulations. This is no different. It's learning a new set of rules that govern an activity you enjoy, and once you've internalized them, they stop feeling like obstacles and start feeling like common sense. The first few trips might require extra research and careful checking, but after that, it becomes muscle memory, just another part of the routine. Your next journey, whether it's across the country or across an ocean, deserves to be memorable for the right reasons. The sights you see, the people you meet, the experiences you collect, not for the hours spent in a security office explaining why you packed what you packed. By taking these precautions seriously, by respecting the complexity of modern travel regulations, you're ensuring that the focus stays where it belongs, on the adventure itself. Safe travels, and remember that the best trips are the ones where nothing goes wrong because you never gave it the chance to.